our demands increase, our problems become more complex. We are constantly demanding for new ways to do things and address the newly erupting problems. We always want to keep up with what's new. Without research, all these demands, problems, and requirements would go completely unaddressed or unanswered. It serves as a tool for learning. It leads to the enhancement of knowledge, clarifies confusion, rouses interest, and steers up a more profound process of learning where learners engage in logical and analytical thinking. Without research, we would become unaware, trapped in inanity. We would not move forward, be exposed to better ways of doing things. We would be born with curiosity, live with curiosity, and die with curiosity. It advances education. Research brings forth greater observation, results in upgraded principles, improves educational practices, nurtures learning, and fosters new understanding related to teaching, learning, and other educational processes. It helps in understanding society and its culture. It develops awareness and appreciation of the society's norms, customary beliefs, social forms, material traits, and practices. Knowledge of society and its culture enables you to develop an, a well balanced view of your surroundings and guide you to move through and view the world. It acts as a means to find, gauge, and seize opportunities. Research poses various opportunities that help people nurture their potential and achieve goals. These, among others, can be in the form of getting employment, availing scholarships, training grants, project funding, business collaboration, and budget traveling. It drives advancement in science and technology. A society without research goes stale and experiences slow or new progress at all. Research impacts innovation and evolution in the field of science and technology. Science has given man the chance to pursue societal concerns such as ethics, aesthetics, education, and justice, to create cultures and to improve human conditions. Technology, on the other hand, makes life easier, expedites communication, eases mobility, facilitates learning, and results in many breakthroughs. It leads to increased knowledge, medical discoveries, and treatment of illnesses. Now we have this COVID-19 pandemic. Medical research paves way to basic science discoveries, drug development, and advancement in the areas of biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, and medical equipment. More advanced medical practices and better patient care services are amongst the significant repercussions of integrating research and innovation into medicine. Let's proceed. Characteristics of quality. Okay, so before we proceed to the characteristics of good research, okay, let us go back to this illustration. Sensya na, why ko kapos kagina. So what is a research? So I came up with this illustration after reviewing several sources. And I believe that this is a more complete and more comprehensive definition of research. So, research is an objective, systematic, scientific of igakupitu process of igakupido, identifying, gathering, analyzing, classifying, organizing, presenting, interpreting, disseminating, and utilizing data or information to serve the following purposes: find solution to a problem, validate existing truth, create a theory for prediction, invention, innovation, and above all, improve the quality of human life. So, as an objective process, it utilizes factual information, not based on hearsays. Systematic because it follows step by step procedure as indicated in this IGACOPIDO, and scientific because it is based on empirical investigation. Now, if we look at the process, take note, now research does not end with interpreting the data or presenting findings or results. So it goes beyond the presenting or disseminating findings and results. Tingnan nyo po yung last, utilizing. So meaning, the research products are utilized in order to serve the following purposes. Our research does not end in a shelf. No, the findings or the results can provide information that can be inputted. I think this is a more correct pronunciation. That can be input, no, to plan for intervention or to draft an enhancement program to improve the existing ways of doing things. So the very target of research is improvement in the quality of human life. So I also shared another original mnemonics. So I think ara siya na, dito siya siguro somewhere here. Okay, this one. So again, this is original, no? And I'd like to acknowledge, I'd like to mention the name of Mom Victoria Kango, another teacher in research, no, sa KAMSI. So we are not used to lifting information from books. We try to come up with our own, no? So the one I presented about the comprehensive definition of research, and this one, okay, gawa ito ng mga teachers sa KAMSI. So what is research? Research stands for relevant endeavor, scientific exploration, and active response to the changing human needs. Still, it goes back to the idea that research is for the improvement of the quality of human life. We cannot avoid change. No? So everything around us, no, almost everything constantly changes. Okay, so the people's needs, the society's needs continue to change, and research is there to respond to the changing needs of the people and the society. And I find this definition very simple, and we could easily, no, remember research based on this definition, no, but very encompassing, very complete, no. So again, I'd like to mention Mom Victoria Cango, who prepared this definition for us. Okay? So, presented next the importance of research. Well, of course, for now, siguro ginatanaw ninyo, research is important because you cannot graduate, no? From a degree without research. I'm talking about professional degrees, no? So same thing, you cannot be fully a you can't be a full-fledged masters or doctors without research. So this is really a requirement. But beyond that, the research serves other purposes. So every day in our life as teachers or professional teachers, we encounter problems in the classroom, even in our workplace, the way we deal with our coworkers, with our bosses. So there are always problems, and those problems can easily be good. Can be good topics for research. Okay.
Sige. So we proceed to the next. So what characterize a good research?
Yes. The conclusions derived are accurate and strictly drawn from verifiable evidence gathered using quantitative and qualitative research methods. It has literature base. It is built on existing literature and studies. The research questions are linked to relevant theory and are based on clear chains of inferential reasoning, substantiated by a complete coverage of relevant literature. It also notes the gaps and inconsistencies in previous studies. It should be scientific. It implements a scientific process encompassing all aspects of study design, methods, and procedures. It applies methods that best address the research questions of interest. It provides sufficient description of the sample and appropriate and reliable conceptualization and measurement of variables. Protection against biases and inferential error is also ensured in research. It should be systematic. It observes an organized or a planned process broken into clear steps to form logical and accurate conclusions. The critical inquiry involves a wide range of methods and techniques to develop or establish principles, facts, or generalizable knowledge in a discipline or any field of study. It should be critical. It involves a detailed, analytical, and judicious perspective that concerns the problematization of knowledge. Towards this realization, a research starts with searching for a novel topic based on purpose, something that is new, followed by forming questions, hypothesizing, experimenting to test hypotheses, data analysis, and interpretation. These are fundamental pieces of undertaking require creativity, rational thinking, and logic to produce new knowledge. It should be valid. It provides a solid claim. The researcher uses questions and methodology that appropriately measure or describe the phenomenon under study. The findings of the study truly represent the phenomenon measured or described. It should be reliable. The research method produces stable and dependable results. The research findings, interpretations, and recommendations are all supported by the data collected from the participants or sources. It should be verifiable and replicable. All evidences are solely based on observation that form the basis of findings. The truth in the content and the findings can be verified or checked by the researcher himself or herself or other researchers. That is what we mean of verifiability. And talking about replicability, the research produces the same results even if repeated exactly, either by the same researcher or by another. A good research is relevant. It brings something new to an established body of knowledge. It brings awareness, addresses a need, solves a problem, or leads to informed actions and improved practices. Finally, it should be presentable. The paper adheres to the good standards for reporting. It was subjected to a careful methodical peer review process before it was published. The presentation of data and findings is clear, cogent, and complete.
Okay, so question related to this presentation of the characteristics of quality research. Question. What do we mean with verifiability? Anyone? What do we mean with the replicability? When do we say that a research is presentable? Okay, before we proceed to the next. So, verifiability. Remember the process, igakopido. You disseminate the results of your research. You disseminate your findings. So you attend the fora or conferences, and then you present your completed research before a group of experts, before a group of researchers. So should that they want to replicate your study, now they could employ the same methods, the methods you presented to them during a forum or a conference. When you present your completed research, it is not only that you present your problem and then your findings. You have to let your audience know your methodology, the materials and method that you adopted in order to complete a study. So, verifiability. So, pwede nila tanawon ang imong nga method nga gin-employ, ang imong research design. How did you gather the data? How did you analyze the data? Are the results verifiable? Yes. Why? Because you presented to them how things were done. No? How the data again were collected, how the data were analyzed, no, before you arrived at a specific findings. Now, maghambal kita replicability. You present your research to a group of researchers, and should they want to conduct similar study, no, they would yield the same results. Am I making myself clear? So replicability, a study can be replicated, no? So pwede nga ang study ni Peace Joy, abi kanda ko ni sa KAMSI setting naman, no? So ang topic, for example, the research capability of a public school teachers. So you started dito sa Bacolod, gusto mo subong ang mga northern naman nga bahin sang Negros or southern, so pwede mo siya ma-replicate. And tendency, no, kung the same ang ilang situation, ang condition nila, kay ti more or less ang public school teachers, no, ang ilang sitwasyon palareho man lang. No, pareho sila nga tinawo sang gobyerno under sa control, regulation, supervision, and monitoring of the DepEd. No, should there be proposed studies, pareho ang ilang incentives or rewards nga ginabaton, pareho ang ilang scheduling sang klase, ang load nga gina-carry nila every school year. So given the same scenario, given the same situation, more or less replicable imo nga research, ang findings mo the same sa gihapon. So whatever research in capabilities revealed by the public school teachers in Bacolod City, pwede nga the same man nga mga incapabilities ang i-reveal sa mga DepEd teachers assigned in Northern Negros and in Southern Negros. So that is what we mean of verifiability and replicability. So verifiability, ang nagapamati sa imong research nga gina-disseminate or gina-present, no, pwede nila nga i-audit trail, i-trail nila or i-check, no, ang imong data, ang imong proseso, metodo. Sa replicability, pwede sila maghimo the same research and tendency arriving at similar results. No, given the same condition, of course, it will be a different story kung i-replicate mo sa isa naman iya kalukal of the study nga may lain nga condition ang mga maestra like ang imong study about public school teachers, dalon mo siya dito sa private school. So more or less, findings that will be obtained different from the findings in the previous studies. Why? Because ang imong na participants are now private school teachers. So I think same will happen. This kan pala Rio pa na public school teachers pero isa elementary kag isa college kay lain man niya ang mga teachers sa KAMSI sa tertiary teaching compared mo sa elementary teaching. I think ang ara sa elementary, sorry, no offense intended, no? Mas loaded ka mo ikumpara sa mga ara sa tertiary. Why? Because we are dealing with adult learners and somehow most of them can already manage, di ba? So, biskan gani sa lecture hours lang gid, no? Ang mga teachers sa elementary, you handle teaching from the first up to the last period. Kami, iya, gamay nga lecture, gamay nga input, and students can be left alone to perform some activities or performance tasks because they can already manage. So, in terms of responsibilities, public elementary school teachers are more bombarded compared to tertiary school teachers. Biskan pareho pa public school system. So, ang ginambal nga replicability, halos palareo gid no pati ang attributes or characteristics ang mga participants nga iusaron mo sa study nga imo nga gin replicate. So also mentioned here ang last diri bala no it should be relevant mentioned already it addresses the current need no it provides solution to a problem or if not if it is not intended to solve a problem no it can develop it can lead to the development of a theory so knowledge evolution naman siya no or pwede man the research is intended to validate or to challenge an existing theory. So, pwede mo i-challenge ang conventional. So, previous research, nag-reveal sa nga muni, pero ang bago yung research sa subong, lain ang gina-reveal niya. Of course, why? Because people change. No? Society changes. Presentable, your research is free of grammatical or syntactic errors. No? Your research follows the correct format. No, your research uses simple terms or language. So presentable. So it does not require you to, use high sounding words to make your research more presentable. So again, ang gina-encourage diri iya mag-usar kita sa mga simple terms that are easily understood by our target audience. Okay?
Let's proceed. The basic steps in research. Writing a research paper demands a painstaking process. The basic steps undertaken do not follow a linear path where you need to complete one step before proceeding to the next step with a definite beginning and an end. It rather follows a cyclical or helical course. Most often, it begins with a problem and ends with a problem. The moment it is completed, it can bolster efforts for further inquiry and investigation. It continually evolves and goes through a cycle of planning, acting, observing, reflecting, and then returning to planning. Each step involves critical thinking and making sound decision. To illustrate the basic steps in research, it begins with conceptualizing the research problem. Formulation of research problem is the first step to begin with in writing a research paper. Here, the researcher recognizes the existence of a problem and starts to develop a conceptual model of a research problem where he or she identifies the key concepts and variables to be measured or described in a study. This step is followed by reviewing the literature. The researcher surveys books, scholarly journal articles, theses, dissertations, and any other sources, and present a description, summary, and critical evaluation of these works relevant to the research problem or area being investigated. After the review of literature, the researcher defines the research question. The researcher poses specific research questions as object of inquiry. This step will guide the succeeding steps in the research process. After the problem is defined, the researcher will proceed to the identification of the fitting research methodology. The researcher determines the specific methods, tools, and techniques to identify, select, process, and analyze information about a topic. This step reflects the researcher's approach to the entire research process. After the identification of the methodology, the researcher will now start to collect data. The researcher may use a variety of ways, such as using questionnaire, conducting interview, doing a documentary survey, conducting observation, and the like to gather data that will answer the stated research questions, test hypotheses, and evaluate outcomes. Next is analyzing and interpreting data. This step constitutes the important part in the research process. The researcher now assigns meaning to the data collected to arrive at findings and subsequently formulate the conclusions and determine its significance and implication. After the analysis and interpretation of data, the findings are now ready. The researcher will present the results of his or her study. The results section of a paper states the empirical information derived from the data collected and analyzed. After findings, drawing of conclusions. This is where the researcher puts all the pieces together or sums up in a cogent discussion the key findings of the study and their implications for theory and practice. The researcher synthesizes the key findings without introducing new ideas that depart from the study findings. Next is disseminating results. The researcher presents the findings of his or her research to the intended study stakeholders. The researcher also relays to the audience the study background, the methodology adopted, the key findings drawn from the data collected and analyzed, and study limitations. The researcher also um, proposes recommendation. Next is the conceptualization of the research problem. As I have mentioned a while ago, the research process begins with a problem and ends with a problem. It follows a cyclical or helical path.
Okay. So you look at closely the steps observed in research. So as emphasized, it follows a helical course or a cyclical path. It begins with a problem and ends with a problem. Please take notice of these first two steps: conceptualizing the research problem, so a problem exists, and then reviewing literature to explain the existence of a problem, to explain the factors or aspects related to the problem. Now, pwede ni ka-interchange ang duwa? Yes. No? Because in some other colleges or universities, students are advised to start with the literature review. So if you do not have any problem in mind, you may start with the review of literature. Okay? So out of your reading of literature, you can think of a problem. But if you already have a problem in mind, then you start with the conceptualization of your research problem and then look for literature that will provide explanation to the existence of a problem. Am I making myself clear? So you may start with the literature review if you do not have any problem in mind. So by reading literature, no, you could start to conceptualize your research problem. So it is not at all times that we begin with this and then followed by this. These two again can interchange. Then we define the research question. So in a short while, we will take up formulating research questions. So based on the research problem, you will now raise questions. And based on the postulated questions, you will identify the most appropriate research methodology. Okay? So choosing the research methodology. Are you going to opt for a quantitative research where statistical analysis is required or for a qualitative exploratory research? So that would depends on your research problem. Okay? So your methodology shall be determined by the way you pose your research questions, no? Would be determined by your research problem, the problem advanced in the study. Then after that, you gather data, no? Collect data. So this can be done by using questionnaire method, or you use interview, or you conduct focus group discussion, or data can be collected even without involving people, like when you do documentary survey, where you only need to visit, um, anong tawag sina, mga divisions that or offices that archive documents. So there's no need for you to interview people or to ask questions from your respondents. Ano ka lang, mag-browse ka lang or mag-survey sang document, pwede nga mahuman imo nga research. Am I making myself clear? Pwede ka gani ka human research by simply comparing results or findings of previous research. Then you apply meta-analysis where you try to compare and contrast previous findings. Then after you collect the data, you will subject your data to methodical analysis and interpretation. Then after the analysis and interpretation, you will draw findings. So the findings are solely based on the gathered data. So you cannot present findings that are not revealed by your data. So your data are the primary basis in the formulation of findings. And then after that, you draw conclusions. Now, the conclusions may include the implications depending on the research format observed by a college or university. Kay when you go to CAMSI, for example, every finding there must be a conclusion. No? And when you go to Silliman University, we embed in our conclusions the implications and likewise the recommendations. But some colleges would have separate sections for implications, conclusions, and recommendations. And then, as mentioned a while ago, we do not want our paper to end up in a mental piece. No, we want the results disseminated. So we attend the research fora or conferences, no, where we present our findings to a group of teachers or researchers. And then back to the conceptualization of a research problem, because a completed research may bolster further efforts, no? So, pwede nga mag-develop na naman ang isa ka researcher na mati siya sa imong nga presentation, pwede siya ka-think of another problem related to your completed study. Now, this time, covering wider scope and coverage and having more variables. Okay? So, again, this illustration is about the basic steps observed in the conduct of research. Are there questions before we proceed to the next part of the presentation? Okay, so amat-amat na ha. Why pa kita sa
Most
chapter 1?
often, I'd like to reiterate, it begins with a problem and ends with a problem. Let us now proceed to the classification of research. The research question is
Okay. Now, accidentally that part was deleted, but we will have another presentation for the classification of research, no? So for a while, we just proceed kay kabudlay magsaylo-saylo. Again, this will be elaborated, no? Maybe next meeting, no? Before I proceed to chapter 2, we will take up the classification of research. But if time would allow us later, masingit naton ang classification of research. Okay, so we're done with the meaning of research, importance of research, and characteristics of good research. We now proceed to
project
the research questions.
or a researcher sets out to answer. This forms the base of your research inquiry and is considered as the first active step in doing a research. The statement of research question defines what the researcher is trying to find, and this also sets the confines and directions of the study. Complex process of data gathering and analysis, synthesis of related ideas from multiple sources, and examination of arguments are all vital to address a research question. Now, there are three major classification of research questions. One, descriptive question. This asks for definitive or definitional or descriptive information. It is simply designed to reveal a respondent or participant's response to a particular question. This question begins with what, how, and why. Examples are, what is the level of research productivity of the college faculty? How colleges or universities support engagement in research of the faculty? Why college faculty do not actively take part in research undertakings? So the first question is quantitative descriptive, and the last two questions, beginning with how and why, are qualitative descriptive questions. Second, we have comparative question. Now, comparative question intends to determine and analyze the differences between two or more groups on one or more characteristics measured. It typically begins with what is or what are the differences between, or is there or are there significant differences in or between. Example, is there a significant difference in the level of research capability of the college faculty when they are grouped and compared according to professional background? So you now want to compare the level of research capability of the college faculty when they are classified according to professional background. And how do we group them according to professional background? Education graduate versus non-education graduate, baccalaureate degree holder versus master's degree holder versus a doctorate degree holder. Now, another is we have causal or relational based questions. Now, these questions are used to determine or examine the existence of association or strength of association between two or more variables. This question also aims to establish the cause and effect relationship between the measured variables. This question begins with what is the relationship between, or is there a significant relationship between? So, for example, is there a significant relationship between the educational attainment and demonstrated level of research capability of the college faculty? Now, using the COMSI format, we only have two types of question. The descriptive, asking for the what is or for the what are, for the how and for the why, and the inferential questions, those that are asking for the significant difference or for the significant relationship. So, basing on this presentation, causal, relational based question, and comparative questions um, can fall under the inferential types of questions. Again, those questions asking for the significant difference and asking for the significant relationship. So we have here a sample statement of a problem. This is the general statement of a problem. Please examine closely. This ends with a period or in declarative form. The study aims to determine the existing system support capability and involvement of public elementary school teachers in research in the Division of Bacolod City for school year 2018-2019. Now, from the general statement of a problem, we formulate the specific statement of the research problem. And this time, our specific statement is in interrogative form or ending with a question mark. We begin with the descriptive question. What is the level of system support to research in terms of norms, fiscal provision, and infrastructure as perceived by the public elementary school teachers when taken as a whole and compared according to? We have four variables: teaching position, educational attainment, years of teaching experience, and training background. And we have another descriptive question. What is the level of research capability of a public elementary school teachers in terms of conceptual, technical, and relational skills when taken as a whole and when grouped according to the same set of variables? So these two questions again are examples of descriptive questions. Okay, we proceed to the inferential questions, the comparative and causal relational questions. Number three, specific statement is asking for the significant difference in the perceived level of system support of public elementary school teachers when they are compared according to. So we remove the phrase as a whole. Why? Because we cannot compare the public elementary school teachers when they are taken as a whole. Kadalasan kasi kahit significant difference na may as a whole pa rin. Okay, so we have another comparative question. Uh, Is there a significant difference in the level of research capability of public elementary school teachers when they're compared according to same set of variables? So another inferential question, this time relational, no? Or we could have a causal relational. Is there a significant relationship between the levels of the perceived system support and research capability of public elementary school teachers? Okay, so now we base our hypothesis on those questions asking for the significant difference and asking for the significant relationship. So we do not anymore form hypotheses for those questions asking for the what is or what are, or those questions asking for the why and how. Okay? So
Okay,
we now
sige.
proceed to the.
So, we review, no? So everyone, are you still with me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a very important because you will be formulating your research questions. So, using the CAMC format, there are two types of research questions: the general statement and the specific statement of research question. So, our general statement, again, as mentioned, ends with a period in declarative form. And please take note of the elements for the statement of the problem. So the what determine the existing system support, capability, and involvement. The who, public elementary school teachers. Where, division of Bacolod City, and when, school year 2018-2019. Okay, next. After the general statement of the problem, we formulate our specific problems or specific questions. Now, they end in a question mark, so in interrogative form. Now, using the CAMSI format, we only classify specific questions into two: descriptive and inferential. Again, the research questions, talking about the specific research questions, we classify them into two: the descriptive and the inferential. So descriptive questions begin with what is, what are, why, and how. Again, descriptive questions begin with what is, what are, why, and how. Why and how are for qualitative research. But for now, we just give attention to quantitative research. So you look at the example: what is the level of system support? What is the level of research capability? So the level of system support and the level of research capability are dependent variables or criterion variables. When grouped and compared according to ang teaching position, educational attainment, years of teaching experience, and training background, these are independent variables, our basis for grouping. Am I making myself clear? So take note. This is our general statement of the problem. And these two are our specific research questions. And they are descriptive questions. So after the descriptive, we proceed to asking for the inferential questions. So in our previous illustration, no, we have the causal comparative and we have the correlational. No, kagina bala? No, may ara kita descriptive, comparative, and causal correlational. Okay, pero sa KAMSI ang format, duwa lang ni class: descriptive, asking for the what is or what are, and the inferential, asking for the difference, asking for the relationship. So sa inferential naton, dala na to ang comparative and then the causal correlational. Am I making myself clear? So again, I'm talking about the CAMSI format because schools vary in terms of their research culture and research format. So again, do not forget that we have our descriptive and inferential questions. The descriptive, asking for the what is or what are, and the inferential, asking for the difference or the relationship. So if we are already asking for the difference, we do not anymore indicate the phrase when taken as a whole. Now, this is a common error. Biskan doktor na, no? Ga-present sa iyang research, gapamangkot, is there a difference when taken as a whole? We do not anymore include the phrase when taken as a whole because we cannot compare our subjects when they are taken as a whole. So they need to be grouped according to the variables specified in our study. So am I making myself clear? Now, what is the difference between asking for the significant difference and asking for the significant relationship? Now, significant difference between groups and significant relationship between variables. Now, let me show you another set of example. No? Kay sa liwat, kinanglan gid ninyo na mag-formulate sang research question. Okay, can you still see my screen? Okay? Are, ma-open ko bago? Hello, are you still with me?
Yes,
Yes,
Doc.
Table para klaro sa
yes,
atin.
ma'am.
Okay? So, we first have our general statement of the problem. Okay? So, general statement of the problem. Okay, the study aims. Now we use a present tense or future tense if we are working on a proposal. For the moment that that has been completed, we change the verb to okay?
Why ito? Why ito? Why ko sa chimpo to? Hilip wala.
Ayan na. Okay, so where are we now? Are you still with me?
Yes,
Yes,
Doc.
Balik
Yes,
ka din
Doc.
ako magbalik ha, hindi na ko nautin. Okay. Sige, sige. Requesting everyone to please mute your microphone for a while so we could proceed without interruption. Everyone, please mute your microphone. Basi nalipat lang, no? Okay, sige. So mabalik kita ha. Okay, this will be part of your activity, no? So we cannot proceed if our formulation of the research question is wrong. So present tense, if we are working on a proposal or thesis plan, then we change the verb to past form the moment the study has already been completed. So that study aims to determine what level of academic performance of who? Of primary grade pupils. Okay, where? In District 1. Okay, so actually we hide the school for ethical reason in case our research would generate, bad results. So issue of ethics, so we observed that sometimes ang ngalan sang school ginahide naton. So in District 1, okay, when taken as a whole and when grouped according to sex. Okay, so gendering performance, say, amo na biaton nga title, does sex really matter when talking about pupils' academic performance? So may mga theory nga naga-support sina, no? Nga ang mga babayi, palatuon gid man niya, palatuon kumpara sa mga lalaki. So gendering performance in the elementary grades, no, or primary grades The study aims to determine the level of academic performance of primary grade pupils in District 1 of Bacolod City. Ito na, when taken as a whole, may district na, may division, pwede, no? Under division, may mga districts, right? So when taken as a whole and when grouped according to sex. So in declarative form now, we proceed to our specific questions. So under specific questions, we have what? Descriptive, hoping that this is now very clear to everyone. So what is the level of control copy, level of academic performance. Okay, nagsubra na. So what is the level of academic performance of primary grade pupils in District 1 of Bacolod City when taken? O, hindi na lang siya makakas sa specific question. Okay, kaya ara naman siya sa babaw. Okay, may nagapanukpok. Dali lang. Dali lang, Ged. Okay, so good afternoon. Okay, we go back to our sample. Okay, ara na. So, I deleted District 1 of Bacolod City because they are already stated no, in our general statement of the problem. So, what is the level of academic performance of primary grade pupils? Istan ko anay class ang variable, ha? Okay, kay para maka-relationship kita, no? Ang sex bali nominal eh. So islan ko when group according to weekly allowance. Okay, does a weekly allowance matter, no? To children's academic performance. So weekly allowance. Kung dako balabalon ang ilang performance maayo man o kung jutay ang performance hindi man maayo. Okay, so this is now our descriptive question. So again, you try to compare general statement in declarative form and descriptive question under the specific questions. Okay, we use interrogative form. So another specific question, inferential. Again, these descriptive and inferential questions are classified under the specific questions, ending with a question mark. So we start with the comparative. Is there a Okay, so is there a significant difference? Okay. In the level of academic performance of primary pupils, again, we remove when taken as a whole. So we cannot compare them if they are taken as a whole. So we now have one descriptive and one inferential question. And this is, again, measuring for the significant difference. Measuring for the significant difference. Okay? So this is comparative. Let's have another inferential question. Is there a significant relationship between so between the level of academic performance and amount of weekly allowance of the so you try to compare Okay, is there a significant difference in the level of academic performance of primary grade pupils when grouped according to weekly allowance? This one, is there a significant relationship between the level of academic performance and amount of weekly allowance of the primary grade pupils, or does weekly allowance influence or correlate with the student's level of academic performance? Okay, so now let's note the difference between asking for the significant difference and asking for the significant relationship. Now, significant difference, as I mentioned a while ago, is between groups. Okay, but significant relationship is between variables. Okay, so, meaning, if we ask for the significant difference, it is a difference between those who receive, okay, butangan ta, between those who receive 150 and below weekly allowance versus and above 150 peso weekly allowance. So that's measuring for the significant difference. So meaning, students who receive 150 peso and below weekly allowance versus students who receive above 150 peso weekly allowance. So we have basis for grouping. It's between groups. Now, what about relationship? Okay. So, nag-caps lock, hindi hungod, i-caps lock ko na lang. So, it is relationship between variables, and we have two variables: academic performance versus weekly allowance. So, please try to note the difference, no? So, ini na siya ya, kwaon ko ni Ana ya, para klaro. Okay? So, receiving 150 peso and below weekly allowance versus receiving above 150 peso weekly allowance. Okay? So, see the difference between asking for the significant difference and asking for the significant relationship. Are you still with me? Hmm?
Yes, me.
Yes, Doc.
So the difference is between variables, and the relationship is between, the difference is between groups, and relationship is between variables. Okay, let me illustrate this. Simple lang gid nga statistical computation. Okay, erase ko ni Anay ha, para klaro pagid sa aton. Nga lain gid ang magpamangkot kita significant difference kag magpamangkot sang significant relationship. Dali lang gid ha, kay may masulod pa. Okay, nag-brown out, pero sige lang, padayon kita. May lang kay Aray ko, di ba? No? So, may UPS. Okay, so dali lang ha. Action ko anay ang kwan. Nag-brown out.
1A ni guys, 1A.
Okay, this is 1A. Basi nagtalang ka, sir?
Sa 1B actually, ginano ko, ma'am. Subong ko lang nakita. Sa 1C ko nagsulod.
Ay, sus Okay, we started this morning. Sige, I don't know what happened because I was not allowed to to communicate with you. I think the office through Ferry or through Ma'am Pulgarinas communicated with you. Sige na, balik na kita. No, na medyo may nagagahod-gahod. Okay. Sige. So, again, our grouping is based on weekly allowance. So, tulukon to niya, Why pa ta sa chapter 3? But just to illustrate that it is different when asking for the significant difference and when asking for the significant relationship. So we place here our academic performance. Okay? So say for example, no, our student 1 receive weekly allowance amounting to 120 pesos. Ini siya 300 per week. 3,000 na nabutang ko. Okay, this one 500 for 20. Okay, may ara guro pigado gid 50 or 75 pesos per week or 100. Ara na? May kurinti na? Non-plug ko na. Okay, so 125, 80, 400. Okay, these are fictitious data just to illustrate to you that asking for the significant difference is different from asking for the significant relationship. So for 20, 100, o 90. Okay, do tayon talanga. So ining si student 1 receiving 120 peso per week, ang iya nga average grade 89. Okay, this one 300, ang average grade is 78. Hinungod ko ginamadagko allowance no bu. Okay, ini siya 81. Okay, ini siya 83. Ini siya 90. Ini siya 91. Oh, ini 90. Ini siya 84. Okay, ini siya 88. 85. 81. 80. 96. Ini siya is 89. Okay? So in our column 1, column A, we have the weekly allowance indicated no, in pesos. And in our second column, we have the academic performance. So based on their average grade, for example. Okay, so our first question is, what is their level of academic performance when taken as a whole? And then when grouped according to weekly allowance. Okay, so we will first address no, the descriptive question, their level of academic performance when taken as a whole and when grouped according to weekly allowance. Okay, all our data should be in numbers, no? Because we're doing quantitative analysis. So we will first have a grouping here, no? Mag-grouping kita. Insert, sorry. Okay, insert. So grouping based on weekly allowance. Okay, so weekly allowance grouping. Okay, so we will code 150 pesos and below 150 and below, and then 2 for above 150 pesos per week. Okay, so this is below 150, 1, above 150, 2, above, below, above, below, and below. Okay? So next after that, kay si Excel medyo magulang lang ni, no? Medyo magulang lang ni sa calculator. Kapiyon ko niya na yun, diriyo ha, dali lang gid, hindi magtalang. Kung naka-open ang ako ni SPSS, be. Kopyahon ko anay. Kaya saron tani nga data karon are. Sige. File, new data. Okay, so kopyahon ko lang anay. Reserve di siya para dugay-dugay. Oops. Nay lang. Control copy. And then I'll copy it here. Okay, sige, balik tayo kay Excel ha. Okay, first question, what is the level of academic performance when taken as a whole? So this is question 1, when taken as a whole. Okay, so we will first click our equal sign here, and then function, and then average weekly allowance when taken as a whole. Again, when taken as a whole. Kita niyo? Okay, so click OK. So average weekly allowance, academic performance, when students are taken as a whole, we have 86.07. So this is their academic performance when taken as a whole. Next, question number 1, when grouped according to weekly allowance. So we will start with the 150 pesos and below, and then compute for the mean of above 150 pesos. So that's why we have this grouping based on weekly allowance. Okay? So, may grouping kita nga 1 and 2. Kay kabudlay mag-compare kung why naton siya mag-group into 2. 1, 150 peso allowance and below, and 2, above 150 allowance. So, I will first sort, tingbon ko ang tanan na 1, kag tingbon ko ang tanan nga 2. Sort by column B. Am I making myself clear? So, again, no? So, pwede nga dalon nyo ang label sa babaw or pwede din na lang tao. Okay, sort, custom, according to this grouping. Okay? So, students' academic performance for group 1, those who are receiving 150 peso allowance and below, in yellow, highlight, and 150 pesos and above in blue, highlight. Okay? So, I will compute for the mean of students receiving 150 peso allowance per week and below per week. So, average. So, just highlight their academic performance. So, students receiving 150 peso allowance and below have the average of 89.63. Okay? So what about students receiving weekly allowance of 150 pesos and above? Okay? So highlighted from here, again as marked by 2, from here down to 80. So their average grade is 81.33. Okay? So, although the descriptive questions can already provide us with an idea whether there's a difference or there is no difference, but that would not suffice. So, it would really entail for the application of an inferential tool. So, dapat may inferential tool gid kita. So, we start with the significant difference. Tulukon ninyo ha, direction sang aton nga computation. Again, as mentioned, significant difference is between groups. So meaning group 1 versus group 2. Those receiving 150 peso allowance and below per week, and those receiving above 150 peso allowance per week. Am I making myself clear? Klaro na? So, magsuma kita, tuluka ang akon nga direksyon. Okay, is there a difference between this group and this group? Okay, let us find out. Okay, so this time, I will make use of the data analysis. Okay, so I will make use of the data analysis. Boy. Si data analysis ko nadula naman. Okay, sige. So, pwede man natin mausar ni siya ang function kay may t-test bande, but the t-test will not provide us with the p-value for easy interpretation. So may t-test ni siya eh, kay between groups. So that would call for the t-test, okay? So I will make use of data analysis. Okay, so dali lang kay nadula, na disable ang akon nga data analysis. So audience analysis tool pack, go, check analysis tool pack, okay. But how come that data analysis does not appear here?
Excel kung naka-check ang data analysis tool pack, ipatch mo lang ang Excel ka-tablet. Ano mo na? Try mo lang. Isama mo.
Save as. Kaya, sample data. Kaya kanugon mag-start naman ako. Save. Okay, close ko class ha, kaya hindi mag-appear si data analysis. Para na, may kuryente na. Okay. Para na siya. This one class. Okay, so again, we're now dealing with the inferential question. Is there a difference between group 1 and group 2? So look kung anong akon nga buhaton. Kay ma-usar na ako kay data analysis, I will no longer indicate equal sign here. Kagina nag-started ko sa equal sign, so the result will be indicated particularly in this cell, and this cell. Okay? So I will click data. Again, if this is not appearing on your screen, all you need to do is go to File, More, click Options, and then Add-ins. Make sure that Analysis Tool Pack is highlighted, then you click Go. Make sure that this box for Analysis Tool Pack is checked, and then you click OK. And this will automatically appear. Okay, so I will be calculating for the existence of difference between group 1 and group 2. Okay, so data analysis. I will look for the t-test. Okay, so for a while, I'll choose the unequal variance. Okay, actually, to solve for this, we may opt for the SD, no? Sige. I-close ko anay, butangan natin siya result for SD. Kay ini siya iya ka min, ini siya iya ka SD. So for us to decide whether to click an equal or equal variance. Okay? So home, center. Okay. So SD for this, click equal sign. So the result will be displayed in this cell. Then you go to function and then click stdevs. My ara is stdevp for population, but let's presume that we're dealing with a sample. Okay, sample part of the population. Sample to represent the population. A sample has the representativeness of the population. And then you click OK. So we start with the 150 and below academic performance, highlighted in yellow. So the SD is 3.34. Okay? So liwat ha. You just click equal sign. Okay, then click function. And then stdevs. Okay. Click OK. So we proceed to the 150 pesos and above function. stdevs OK. So the above 150 from here down here. So we have 2.42. So if you notice, ang SD nila nagavary. So unequal variance. 3.34 for 150 pesos and below, and then 242 for above 150 pesos. Okay, so we will now address, is there a difference? Okay, click data, data analysis, and then look for t-test because we will be comparing for two independent means. That of group 1, 150 pesos and below versus group 2, above 150 pesos. Unequal variance as indicated by 3.34 and 2.42. Then we click OK. So for variable 1 range, is there a difference in performance of group 1? Look what I am doing. Group 1 versus academic performance of Group 2. Again, let me do it. Is there a difference between the academic performance of those receiving 150 pesos and below and those receiving 150 pesos and above? So t-test to sample assuming an equal variances, click OK. Group 1, academic performance. Look at the cursor versus group 2. Just to illustrate how significant difference is being established or calculated. So we click OK. So we will be presented with this result. Okay? So you look for the computed value. So we have here the t-stat, and we have the probability value. Okay? So, kagina, kung nag-usar lang ta sa function, makuha niya to class. Galing, kaya ang i-provide niya is only the computed value. So nga, hindi ko sini mag-usar because if we're using the computed value, we have to locate for the tabular value. And our computed value must be greater than the tabular value. No, for us to reject the null hypothesis and confirm that there is a difference between the two groups. So the moment we reject the null, because the null states the no difference between groups, it means pag in-reject mo siya, there is a difference in the academic performance of the two groups. Although, as I have mentioned, using the mean scores, you can already see that there is a difference between the two groups. Makita mo na actually, ano? So imagine, 86.7 versus, 89.63 versus 81.33. So there is really a discrepancy in the academic performance of the two groups. However, it takes an inferential tool like t-test for independent sample for us to confirm the difference. And again, when measuring for, calculating for the difference, it is group 1 versus group 2. Okay? So, question about this now. Balik kita, no? So, sa sheet 2, mangita pa kita sang tabular value. Di naton makita ang tabular value sa mga books sa statistics, no? So, kung nadumduman ninyo sang college, magpangita sang sang tabular value, no, gina-connect mo ang degree of freedoms because we have two groups, so N1 plus N2 minus 2 because we have two groups, and then the alpha level which is always set at 0.05 degree. Diba? So, i-compare mo si computed kay tabular value. If the computed value is greater than the tabular value, we reject the null, meaning we confirm the difference between those receiving 150 peso and below and 150 peso, above 150 peso weekly allowance. Okay? So why ko ni nag-usar? Dili ko nag-usar kay p-value that only data analysis could produce. Okay? Nga kay hindi na kuya mangita kay tabular value. no? Ang imuon ko na lang, i-compare siya sa iya nga alpha level. So, if the P value is equal to or less than 0.05, we reject the null hypothesis, meaning there is difference between group 1 and 2 level of academic performance. Okay? So again, there is no need for me to locate for the tabular value found in the statistics or research books. Why? Because ang akong talaksan is only the 0.05 alpha level. So if the generated p-value is less than 0.05 or equal to 0.05, reject null, meaning the difference is significant. Now look, our p-value here, just look at the first two digits after the decimal point, no? So to do kabala class, it's 0.00. And 0.00 is less than 0.05. So meaning we reject null, meaning there is a difference between those who receiving 150 peso and below allowance and those receiving above 150 peso allowance. Okay? So again, that is for the difference. It is between group 1 and group 2. Okay, what about relationship? Okay? So relationship between variables. So meaning, it is not between group 1 and group 2, but between variable 1, academic performance, variable 2, weekly allowance. So makuha na di siya klaso sa relationship, no? Pwede lang i-click mo si function, then you look for kay interval aton data i-discuss ko man sa inyo matamaton talang gid class ha. Kay kadamo gid sang dapat hangpon sa research, no? So ngitaon ko anay si Pearson. Okay? So look at my direction, everyone. No? Hindi ko yung mag-group 1 versus group 2. No? Because this is issue between weekly allowance from top to bottom versus academic performance from here down here. Kita nyo? Okay, so sumahon ko ha if there is relationship between the two. So again, no, kadto ako sa kay Pearson because the data are interval. How do we know that the data are interval? O, daso na lang na nga discussion. No, kay magutok na sa inyo nga ulo. Okay, so again, array 1, weekly allowance. Array 2, academic performance. Okay, then we click OK. So look, the result is negative. Okay, so the result is negative. So ang pamangkot, may relationship o kung wala. No? Take note regardless of the positive or negative sign. So from 0.00 to 0.20, negligible. From 0.21 to 0.40, again. Pero kisang iban, asa lang ni sa 19, then 20 to 39. So, depende sa inyo nga reference, ha? Okay. So, 0.40, then 0.41 to 0.60, then 0.61 to 0.80, and then 0.81 to 1. Okay? So ano ni siyang bot silingon? Very high level of correlation, moderately high level of correlation, low level, and then very low or negligible level of correlation. Okay, negligible. Now look, our result is negative 77, and this falls between 0.61 and 0.80. So meaning there is a high correlation between academic performance and weekly allowance. Am I making myself clear? But the correlation is negative. So meaning, atong mga pigado nga estudyante, mas taas ang performance. The more nga naganubo ang allowance, nagataas ang performance. And that can be explained by literature class. Again, every research should have base in literature. So may maika-explikar nga literatura sina nga ang mga pigado nga estudyante mas taas ang grado nila. Yes, of course. No, the more that they are motivated to learn, to study because they want to emancipate themselves from poverty. So the more that they strive to learn. Okay? So amo na nga dapat ang aton nga research may literature base. So kita nyo ang kinalain kung magtakos kita difference kag performance o you look at the SPSS processing. Okay? So, dali lang. May ginpaubra na nga assignment. Okay? So, i-label naton nga variables. Amo ning ilang nga weekly allowance. Okay? So, ini siya weekly allowance man ni. Pero, group ni siya ya class. Okay? So, next. Ay. Illegal character. Dahil lang gid. So, weekly allowance group. Sige. And this one is the academic performance. Academic performance. Dapat wala gid space. Okay? So, weekly allowance is scaled. Okay? So, ang group nila is also scaled. Academic performance also scale data. Tudlo ko man ni sa inyo nga nag-scale siya. Okay? So, diri nag-grouping kita. So, group 1, meaning ang allowance niya, 150 pesos and below. Okay, add. And then ang 2, 1 above 150 pesos. Okay, then add. Okay? Sige na. So, balik kita. Data view. Everyone, you look at our data. Okay? So, 150 and below ni, above 150 ang grouping naton. Okay, i-analyze naton. Tanawon ta ha, kung pareho ang results sini sa aton nga Excel. Okay, abibi, ang Excel nyo kagina, everyone, okay, para hindi kita magbalik-balik, pat ina nato, no, kung pila ang aton nga result kagina, no? So, 86, 89, 81, no? Amo niya nga standard deviation. Doon amo niya nga sumada sa significant difference, no? 0.00. Okay? So, by the way, I forgot. Pwede manggali bala ka mo class ka agi dira o. Dire, no? Sa data analysis, sa correlation, may ari na di correlation. Ari. Okay. So, ang input range mo, nami niya kay nga hindi ka na yung mag-array 1 kag array 2. So, all you need to do is highlight all. Okay? So, kwaon ko ni anay ho, dali lang ha. Kay i-highlight all ko. Okay? Sige lang. Ma-insert ko. Tuparon ko siya. So, I could highlight all. Are. Control copy, Control V. So if I will make use of this, I'll just click correlation. Liwat mag-data analysis, wala kita equal sign. Then we click OK. So weekly allowance versus academic performance. Then we click OK. And we will be presented with this result. So if you notice, the result does not vary at all. No, we still have 0.77 negative. So the same as this one, 0.77 negative. Okay? So tanawon tabi kung si SPSS would bring us to the same results. So we click analyze. Okay? And then descriptives, okay, when taken as a whole. Okay? So there is the result, no? When taken as a whole, 86.07. Now we look at our Excel result. Pareho? 86.07? Yes. So wala nag-vary. Si Excel man ang masuma o kon si SPSS 86.7. Okay? Pero what's good about this? Pwede nga isa na lang ya kasuma, no? Mabungkit mo na tanan. Like, no? Magtitest ko masabat na si descriptive. For example, analyze. Okay, then compare means. So our dependent assumed cause is the academic performance. No? And our independent list, is there a difference between group 1 and group 2? Okay, ara na. So compare means. Oh. So maklik ka, okay. Look everyone. You compare the result with the Excel. No? Are, 89.62, 3.33. So si Excel kagina sa kay 150 and below, amo man iya result. Tanawon ta. Okay, so namitani ko na muna lang niyo na. Okay, so everyone, bebebe, go. Maidug-idugid kita. Sige. So, 3.33, 89, si 150 and below. Pareho. 89.63, 3.34. Kasi wala lang na ma-round off. No? Check to. 3.34 ko ni round off naton. This one, no? Kita niyo, class? Okay? So, sa group 2, 81.33, 2.42. So, wala siya naglain. No? Sa difference, B kita. Tanawon naton. Cancel. Okay, so, makadto kita sa difference. Sumahon niya na ni pati ang imong descriptive, no? So, we proceed to the compare means. Independent sample t-test. Okay, is there a difference in the academic performance? When their group, according to weekly allowance, group 1, 150 and below, and group 2, above 150, okay, continue, click, okay. So look, tanawon naton, kung 0.00 man, no, kay kagina, si Excel, ang na-generate na result ni Excel is 0.00. Okay, so tanawon naton na liwat ang kay Excel. It is 0.00. Okay, so may pasmado nga kamot nga nagatumpok. So 0.00 ang aton nga p-value by ina lang da class as si tabular nga 5.39, no? Amo ni si tabular. Okay, diri na lang kita matulog kay p-value. So let us see. Pero actually si 5.39 makita man naton karon sa kay Livin, no? So look, everyone, this is now our result. Okay? Now first you will be presented the mean result. So kita nyo, t-test ang akon ginsuma, gindala niya na si descriptive, no? So mabungkit ya tanan ni SPSS nga dito ya isa-isahon mo pa sa kay Excel. So first si Livin tulukon mo ang SIG. Paglapaw na di gani class sa 0.05 tulok babaw. This is the p-value. Okay? Pero si SIG ni Livin pag nubo sa 0.05 tulok dalom. Still 0.00. Kalapuyot gid sang difference. You just look at the first two digits after the decimal point. Still, the SPSS generated result indicating that there is difference between group 1 and group 2. So ang iya nga t-stat amo magyapon, no? So it is 5 point something. So again, just to show to you nga lain ang dealing, mamangkot kita difference between groups, between groups, between groups. 1 versus 2. Relationship between variables. Between variables, it is weekly allowance versus academic performance. Tanawon ta, kung negative 0.77 manibe, so scale, no, makadto ako analyze. Okay, I will look for correlational analysis. Okay, so I will look for correlational analysis here. Bivariate, bi means 2. Weekly allowance versus academic performance. And then I will click for Pearson. No, i-take up ko ni sa inyo si Kendall Tau kag si Spearman after we classify variables according to typology. So again, it is weekly allowance versus academic performance. Then we click OK. Look everyone, our result is still negative 0.77. Okay? Kag if you notice, nag-indicate siya, duwa ka asterisks, there is a nga tabular value. Okay, the p-value here is 0.00, ara permi si p-value sa sig two-tailed. So tandaan nyo lang na nga pag nubo siya sa 0.05 or 0.05 equal, may difference or may relationship. Hindi na malipat kay magwa sa compre. Ang tulupon nyo man lang p-value. Kung patas siya sa 0.05 o manubo sa 0.05, may difference or relationship. Depende sa inyo kung ang usaron nyo computed or tabular value, p-value gali. So ang p-value, amo yung ginausar ko, kaya natakpan ko yung mag-locate sa tabular value. Ngayon mo, pa yung pangitaw ng intercept ni degree of freedom kag ni alpha level, kapoy na magkadto ka pa sa library, no? Or browse kaya sang mga materials sa internet para pangitaon lang ya ang tabular value. Ara na lang ng hapos nga p-value. Gets nyo? Inisya mo niya ang nga computed value, kinanglan nang gini magtakos kalapaw siya sa tabular value. No, pero kung dili kay gatulok ya sa p-value, talaksan mo ya 0.05 lang gid. Karon balikta. Nga may asterisk duwa gid kabilog. Kay tungod nagnubo gid ya ang p-value naton sa 0.01. We only use one asterisk if nubo sa 0.05, but two asterisks if, again, the generated p-value, the obtained p-value is less than 0.01. Okay? So sa statement of the problem pa lang kita, class, no? So buot silingon nga kadamo gid sang dapat tun-an sa research. So it is entirely different when we measure for the significant difference and when we measure for the significant relationship. Are there questions before I proceed to the next? Hindi ka mo maguya-uya, magpamangkot, no? I am trying my best to make things very clear to you kay hindi ko gusto nga matapos ang aton nga research nga wala gid ta may natun-an. Subong pa lang kung kabalo na kamo mag-formulate problem, good na gina siya, class. Kung ma-differentiate ninyo ang measuring for the difference and measuring for relationship, good na siya, class. Okay? So again, difference between groups and variables naman, between variables, ang relationship. Okay, are there questions? Let me see. Baway diapon empty ang aton nga chat box. Okay? So we proceed to the next part, the hypothesis. So, ano ang ginhambal kagina sa intro part? No? We do not formulate hypothesis for descriptive questions. Again, when we speak of descriptive questions, asking for the what is or what are. In the case of qualitative research, beginning with the questions why and how. So if your research questions are simply asking for the what is, for the what are, why and how, your study is hypothesis free. So meaning no more section for hypothesis. Now we base our hypothesis on inferential questions. What do we mean again with inferential questions? Those asking for the significant difference and relationship. So in other words, Dili lang ta sa tatlo niyo, 3, 4, 5 nga research questions, ma-base ang aton nga hypothesis. So let us continue.
Asking for the significant difference and asking for the significant relationship. So we do not anymore form hypotheses for those questions asking for the what is or what are, or those questions asking for the why and how. Okay, so we now proceed to the research hypothesis. How do we define hypothesis? Hypothesis is a statement about expected relationships between two or more variables which permit an empirical testing. That is according to Fisher et al. 1991. A hypothesis is a formal affirmative statement predicting a single research outcome, a tentative explanation of the relationship between two or more variables. It is the most specific statement of a research problem or objective. It is commonly considered as an intellectual, an educated, or an intelligent guess or prediction about the existence, attributes, or relationship between factors or variables covered in the study. Okay, so basing on these given definitions, a research hypothesis is considered to be a specific, clear, or tentative conjecture or testable proposition or predictive statement about the possible outcome of a scientific research study based on a particular property of a population, such as the presumed differences between groups on a particular variable or the presumed relationship between variables. So it is commonly labeled as a scholarly or educated guess because it suggests an outcome based on evidence. This is typically designed for quantitative correlational and experimental research that goes a step further beyond descriptive questions. Now, we do not anymore ask again we do not anymore formulate hypotheses now to those questions asking for the what is or what are. Okay. So according to Creswell also, I'd like to add researchers in quantitative studies use research questions and hypotheses to shape, not take note, to shape and specifically focus on the purpose and objectives of the research study. Now, hypotheses can only be tested using a statistical or quantitative approach. Hence, if our questions are all qualitative questions, no, we do not anymore formulate hypotheses no, for qualitative questions. So hypothesis free. In consideration of this, this approach again is not apt or not really designed for conducting a qualitative research. Now, why a hypothesis is considered important? Now, specifying testable hypothesis is an integral part of writing a quantitative research study. This the priori before expectation of about the results before conducting a study or an experiment. So in this section, the researcher refers back to the research question he or she formulated and speculates expected results, no, or expected results or possible outcomes by forming hypotheses. Differences in relationship between or among variables can be predicted in making hypotheses. And this scholarly assumption is very important, although as mentioned a while ago, it does not only involve a simple guess, no? It is really considered a scholarly or educated or an intelligent guess. Okay, so we proceed. So what are the functions of hypothesis? Number one, it gives a definite point to inquiry. So it sets the direction where to proceed of the study, and this also delimits the point on which the study will give attention to or concentrate. Second, it provides a framework for testing and experimentation. So it guides the planning of research, the designing of instrument, adoption of methods, identification of data to collect, statistical measure to use, etc. Next, it serves as basis for qualifying assumptions, determining the relevance of data, and organizing and explaining the data gathered. Third, it further assists in the precise, meticulous, and more focused analysis of gathered data. It also guides the researcher to provide a well-arranged and consolidated presentation of findings and conclusions, which are meant to answer the research questions advanced in the study. So these are the functions of hypotheses. And again, as I emphasized a while ago, when we formulate hypotheses, we refer back to the question. So the research questions and the research hypotheses guide the course of the study. So the remaining steps to be undertaken will all depend on the research questions and the research hypotheses advanced in the study. So there are basically two kinds of hypotheses. The null hypothesis states the absence of statistical difference between two or more observed groups, or non-existence of significant relationship between two or more variables. And this is represented by H sub O. Again, I'd like to repeat the absence of statistical difference. So meaning there is no significant difference, there is no significant relationship. Here are the examples. There is no significant difference in the demonstrated capability in research of the faculty with master's and doctorate degree. Another one, there is no significant relationship between the level of research capability and the extent of engagement in research of the college faculty. So take note, non-existence of of statistical difference between two or more observed groups. Next, we have the alternative hypothesis. This is a statement of significant difference between two or more groups in a measured variable, or the presence of significant relationship between two or more variables. This is represented by H sub A. Example, there is a significant difference in the demonstrated capability in research of faculty with master's and doctorate degree. So take note, we remove the phrase as a whole for us to be able to compare the demonstrated research capability of the faculty when they are indexed or when they are classified according to their highest educational attainment. Now, there is a significant relationship between the level of research capability and extent of engagement in research of the college faculty. So, haven't you noticed? Now, there's a difference between asking for the significant difference and asking for the significant relationship. The significant difference is between groups like master's versus doctorate degree, between groups, faculty with master's and faculty with doctorate degree. Again, faculty with master's degree versus faculty with doctorate degree. So comparison between groups. Now, what about asking for the significant relationship? It's between variables, not between groups. For example, level of research capability, that's one variable, and extent of engagement in research, that is another variable. So we try to correlate these two variables, research capability and research engagement of the college faculty. Alternative hypothesis is a statement of significant difference between two or more groups in a measured variable, or the presence of significant relationship between two or more variables. This is represented by HS sub A. Example, there is a significant difference in the demonstrated capability in research of faculty with master's and doctorate degree. Another example, there is a significant relationship between the level of research capability and the extent of engagement in research of the college faculty. I forgot to mention, there is a difference between significant difference variables. For example,
Okay, so we
difference.
proceed to the next
For
part.
example,
Okay. So again, the alternative hypothesis is the exact opposite of the null hypothesis. So null statement of hypothesis. There is no difference between groups. There is no relationship between variables. What about alternative? There is difference. So there is this existence of difference between groups and relationship between variables. Now, the alternative hypothesis can further be classified into two. So we have the non-directional using the two-tailed test and the directional hypothesis utilizing the one-tailed test. So let us know the difference between non-directional two-tailed and directional one-tailed.
there is a significant difference in the level of productivity in research of the faculty when grouped and compared according to subjects taught. There is no mention which group has a higher level of productivity, which group has a lower level of research productivity. Okay, we make it directional, showing the direction of the effect or relationship or difference. Example, the college faculty handling academic subjects have a higher level of productivity in research than those handling technical subjects.
Okay. So you note the difference. There is difference. There is relationship. But in non-directional, using two-tailed test, non-directional hypothesis, there is no specification which group is higher or which group is lower. So you look at the example here, there is significant difference in the level of productivity in research of the college faculty when grouped and compared according to subjects taught. But in directional hypothesis utilizing one-tailed test, there is a specification which group has a higher level of research productivity and which group has a lower level of research capability. Now, using the COM-C format, our college format, we do not use alternative hypotheses. So what we have is only the null statement of hypothesis, meaning the statement of no difference between groups and no relationship between variables. So automatically, we are using the two-tailed test. Kay naga-null kita ya class, wala kita ya nag-usar sang alternative hypothesis in our statement of hypothesis. Am I making myself clear? Okay. So ang two-tailed and one-tailed test shall be taken up in our subsequent lessons, no? Kay kuan man lang na areas of rejection. Kaya ang two-tailed left and right, positive or negative, while the one-tailed, no? So one side lang ang aton nga area of direction. So we will have a separate discussion to differentiate clearly what do we mean with two-tailed and what do we mean with one-tailed test. Okay? So klaro sa inyo ang non-directional kag directional hypothesis. Are there questions? We have few minutes left, so hopefully we could finish up to the framework of the study. Are there questions? Wala? Are you still with me?
Yes, daw.
Okay, sige. Sige, hypothesis na ta. Liwat, hindi malipat ang hypothesis para lang gid sa inferential questions. Those asking for the difference and those asking for the relationship. Okay, let's now proceed.
So this time, those faculty members teaching academic subjects have higher, take note, higher level of productivity in research compared to those handling technical subjects.